Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going through the sources you sent us to really explore a fascinating period state building in the Americas.
Right, roughly between 250 CE and, say, 1528 CE.
Exactly. And we're covering a lot of ground here. Think modern Mexico, Central America, the Andes.
Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia, Chile.
Yeah, all the way to the Mississippi River Valley and the southwestern U.S. So we'll be looking at the Maya, the Aztecs, Inca, Mississippian folks, and the Chaco and Mesa Verde cultures.
Yeah, and our mission here, if you like, is to understand how these different state systems actually develop. Why did they take the forms they did?
We want to see what was unique, what innovations popped up.
But also, what carried over from earlier ways of organizing things, the continuities.
Think of it as a shortcut, really, a way to grasp this key period and see the diverse ways societies organize themselves without getting totally overwhelmed.
Exactly. We want to give you those aha moments, get straight to the core insights from the materials, respecting your time and curiosity.
Okay, sounds good. So let's dive in. Where should we start? Mesoamerica.
Yeah, let's start there. Modern Mexico and Central America, and the Maya are really the ones who set the stage, flourishing roughly 250 to 900 CE.
And the Maya, I mean, they were incredibly sophisticated early on, weren't they?
Oh, absolutely. It's really striking. You've got these impressive urban centers, sure, but also, well, they developed the most advanced writing system in the Americas for that time.
That's huge. That must have allowed for much more complex, well, everything. Record keeping, history.
Definitely. It likely gave them a leg up in terms of tracking things, maybe even understanding astronomy compared to cultures without writing like that.
Yeah.
And then there's their mathematics.
Right, including the concept of zero,
Yeah,
which is pretty fundamental.
it really is. Groundbreaking stuff.
But politically, they weren't one big empire, were they? The sources suggest something different.
No, exactly. It was more like a collection of city-states, often fighting each other, actually. Decentralized is the word.
Okay. But they did try to control other areas.
They did. They worked to set up tributary states. Basically, areas they conquered wouldn't be directly ruled day to day by Maya governors, but they had to pay up.
Pay up with goods.
Yeah, tribute. The sources mention things like textiles, weapons, building materials, the kind of indirect control you see in lots of early empires. The local ruler stayed mostly, but owed allegiance and goods to the bigger Maya city.
Okay, that makes sense. And religion was obviously central, too. Something about the sun god needing energy?
Yes. Human sacrifice was a major part of their beliefs. They thought the sun god needed human blood, that vital energy,
Yeah.
to keep fighting off darkness and rising each day.
Intense. Now, the Maya peak was a bit before the 1200-1450 period we often focus on. But understanding them is key for what comes later, right?
Absolutely crucial. It gives us a baseline. We see these earlier forms of state building, and it helps us spot what's continuous and what's genuinely new when we look at later groups.
Like the Aztecs. Exactly. The Aztec Empire, coming much later, roughly 1345 to 1528. Understanding the Maya helps us see where the Aztecs were borrowing from and where they were innovating.
And the Aztecs, who we also call the Mexica.
Right. The terms are interchangeable, really. The Mexica people were the core group that built the Aztec Empire.
Their origins were quite humble, weren't they? Semi-nomadic, moving south.
That's right. They weren't initially a major power. They migrated south around the early 1300s and built their strength through, well, being good at fighting and making smart alliances, often sealing those deals with strategic marriages.
And then around 1428, things really took off.
Yeah, they formed a key alliance with two other powerful city-states. That triple alliance went on an aggressive expansion spree, and that's really the foundation of the Aztec Empire as we know it.
And what's fascinating, like you said, is how much they seem to borrow from earlier models, like the Maya.
Definitely. There's clear continuity. For instance, their political structure, even though they built this huge empire, wasn't about direct centralized control everywhere. So like the Maya, they relied on tributary states.
Largely, yes. Conquered peoples mostly kept their own local rulers but had to pay tribute. It was less about planting Aztec governors everywhere and more about extracting resources.
And that famous Aztec tribute system wasn't just like gold coins, was it?
Oh no, much broader. Food, animals, building materials, luxury goods. The sources list all sorts of things. It was about funneling the wealth and resources of a vast area back to the center.
And the religious motivation, again, echoing earlier traditions, the sun god needing sacrifices.
Precisely. Human sacrifice was still central, driving expansion because, well, more conquests meant more captives for sacrifice. It was deeply embedded in their worldview and their politics.
And they also tried to connect themselves to older respected civilizations to seem more legitimate.
Yes, that's a classic imperial move, isn't it? The Mexica actively claimed heritage from groups like the Toltecs, these revered predecessors of Mesoamerica. It helps legitimize their rule, making them seem like inheritors of a grand tradition rather than just newcomers who won by force.
Building that historical narrative makes sense. Now, their capital, Tenochtitlan. The descriptions are just incredible.
They really are. An estimated population somewhere between 150,000, maybe even 200,000 people. Just a massive city for its time.
And the sources talk about huge marketplaces.
Yeah, indicating a really vibrant commercial economy, lots of trade, specialized crafts, maybe some parallels to what was happening in Song China around that time, that kind of economic buzz.
And the buildings, palaces, huge pyramid temples. One was 200 feet tall.
The Templo Mayor, yeah. Staggering scale.
Yeah.
And you can't talk about Tenochtitlan without mentioning the Chinampas.
Ah, the floating gardens? Well, not floating, but...
Right. Artificial islands built in the shallow lake beds, super fertile, highly productive farmland created right there in the water. An amazing feat of engineering and adaptation.
Just incredible ingenuity. Okay, so that's Mesoamerica, with the Maya setting a stage and the Aztecs building on it in really powerful ways. Let's shift south now to the Andes.
Right. Present-day Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia, northern Chile. Another area with a long history of complex societies.
And the sources mention the Wari as sort of precursors.
Yeah, the Wari society was significant, though it declined around 1000 CE. They were important predecessors to the Inca, who emerged later, mid-1400s, in much of the same territory.
So again, the later empire of the Inca didn't just spring out of nowhere.
Not at all. They clearly borrowed a lot from earlier Andean civilizations, like the Wari. It's really useful to compare the Inca and the Aztecs, actually.
How so?
Well, both were kind of outsiders who rose through military power and expanded incredibly quickly.
Okay, so similarities in their rise.
Right, but big differences in how they ran things once they were in charge. The Inca created a much more centralized state. Think a huge bureaucracy, direct administration.
Whereas the Aztecs were more decentralized, relying on that tribute system we talked about.
Exactly. The Inca state was much more hands-on across its vast territory.
And didn't the Inca have a different system for getting resources too? Not just tribute.
Yes, the Mida system. This was really distinctive. It was a labor tax, basically.
A labor tax? How did that work?
Every able-bodied person had to give a certain amount of their labor time to the state each year.
For state projects?
Yeah, things like mining, building the incredible Inca road system, bridges, serving in the army. It was mandatory labor service, very different from the Aztec focus on tribute goods.
That's a fundamental difference in how the state interacted with its people, the source material. Does it give us a sense of how ordinary people felt about Mida? Was there resistance or ways to get out of it?
The sources focus more on the system itself, its efficiency for the state. How people felt is harder to grasp directly, but it was certainly a heavy obligation. There were likely ways it was managed locally, perhaps some flexibility, but it was a core part of being an Inca subject. We don't get a strong sense of social mobility tied directly to Mida from these materials, more that it was a universal duty.
Interesting. But we still see that continuity theme, right? Religion being tied to politics, building infrastructure.
Absolutely. The Inca political structure was deeply religious, centered on the divine emperor. And their road and bridge network was massive, echoing earlier Wari infrastructure projects, but on an even grander scale.
Those roads were vital for holding that huge mountainous empire together, I imagine.
Totally. Essential for communication, moving troops, moving goods, administering the whole thing. It really reflects that commitment to centralization that set them apart from the Aztecs.
Okay, fascinating contrast. Let's move north now into North America. What was happening there?
Well, we have the Mississippian culture emerging around the 8th or 9th century CE in the Mississippi River Valley.
The first really large-scale civilization in North America based on farming.
That's right. The fertile land there was key. It allowed for agricultural surpluses, bigger populations, and more complex social structures.
And they had chiefs, powerful ones.
Yes, a clear hierarchy. Powerful chiefs, sometimes called the Great Sun, ruled over large towns and had influence over smaller settlements around them. The title Great Sun itself hints at a connection between political power and religious authority.
And the mounds. They're famous for building huge earthen mounds.
They are. And these weren't just random piles of dirt. They had specific purposes, often as burial places for important people, but also as platforms for temples or chiefs' houses.
So building them required real organization.
Absolutely. The ability to marshal the labor to build these massive public works tells you a lot about their political structure and social control. They could coordinate large groups of people.
And Cahokia was the biggest center with the most impressive mounds.
Cahokia, near modern St. Louis, yeah. It was the largest urban center by far, a real hub of Mississippian culture. Remarkable place.
Okay, and then further west in the southwest U.S., we have the Chaco and Mesa Verde cultures.
Right, developing a bit after the Mississippian culture really got going. And they faced a very different challenge, a really dry environment.
So water was everything.
It really was. Their story is one of incredible adaptation. They developed sophisticated ways to manage water reservoirs, canals, check dams.
And the dryness affected their building too, right? Lack of big trees.
Definitely. Timber wasn't readily available like it was further east, so they became masters of stonework using sandstone.
They carved blocks from quarries.
Yeah, and built these huge multi-story structures, sometimes called great houses, some of the largest buildings in North America at the time. They even imported timber beams over long distances when they needed them for roofs.
And the Mesa Verde cliff dwellings, just stunning.
Aren't they? Building entire villages right into alcoves in the cliff faces, using that local sandstone. It's an amazing architectural solution, probably for defense as well as shelter from the elements.
Wow. So looking back across all these regions, Mesoamerica, the Andes, North America, it's just the diversity is incredible.
It really is. Between roughly 250 and 1528 CE, you see such dynamic state building happening all over the Americas. We see those continuities, links to the past.
But also completely unique adaptations, different environments, different political choices leading to very different kinds of states.
Exactly. Whether it's the decentralized tribute model of the Aztecs, or the highly centralized Inca state with its liber tax, or the Mississippian chiefdoms organizing mound construction.
Or the architectural genius of the Maya, or the Chaco and Mesa Verde people adapting to dry conditions.
Right. All of them developed complex ways to organize lots of people, manage resources, and project power. Different methods, but sophisticated systems nonetheless.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it, when you look at all these different paths societies took to build states and organize themselves. What does that tell us about, I don't know, fundamental human needs? Or the basic drives behind creating these large-scale structures?
That's a great question to ponder. What are the common threads, the underlying reasons why humans everywhere seem driven to build these complex social and political systems, even when the results look so different on the surface? Food for thought.